This mental health minute was sent in by Lily. She's been a huge fan of the channel. And she said, hey, can you guys talk about, she know how to word it. So Lily, this is my best: untimely loss of friends and loved ones. I thought it would be fitting. I ran it past Mover, like, since we lost John Frenchie this week, I would consider, somebody passing of cancer as untimely. So, hey, how do you deal with that? And she had dealt with it in her life, and it was some pretty moving stories. But I'm not going to get all preachy, but as a Christian, there's, sometimes I do struggle with, I may have a really close friend of mine who, he lost two babies within the span of under 3 years for extremely rare, unrelated causes, a son and a daughter. And, I just see the way him and his wife have moved on with life. But, I think to myself, like, man, I might be a really, because I have a son and a daughter and I love them very much. And I sit here and think I'd be just super bitter and angry if I was them, knowing what I know. How do you do that? And, as a, as a man who believes in God, my pastor they lost a child, and he talks about it sometimes. Hey, how do you handle things that it's basically unfair, right? And at the end of the day, I just have to believe that I don't know, as a common man, and obviously based on the show, not a very smart man, but as just a common man, I can't possibly understand everything in the universe that's going on. I can't understand a divine power's plans for men and women on earth. And that, to some people, that might seem like a bit of a cop out, but I use that because I think if I didn't have my beliefs, my anxiety and stress would be much higher. There has to be an explanation, and that's what I believe the explanation is. And I look at, we've all had several, close friends pass. And Mover, I mean, I know you've had your parents are gone, and it's just like, you have to have something that you can believe in. And Lily, and one of the things I'll share that she said, which I thought was very, I'll say interesting, but profound maybe, is, you can wake up every day and you can either choose the darkness or the light, and I think that's an interesting perspective. And a lot of times my pastor will say every day, you have to wake up and you have to forgive yourself and others, and you have to forgive the things that have happened that you think that are unjust. And I think that's choosing the light, and that's very powerful. But I mean, that's mentally, that's how I deal with it. Mover, what do you think, man?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, yeah, I mean, I've lost both parents, um, very suddenly, very unexpectedly. Um, it doesn't get easier, it's not something that you deal with and you're like, man, this is easier. I know what to do. I think everyone grieves in different ways. And in times like that, when you lose somebody, unexpectedly and stuff, you just got to feel your feels. You just got to go through it and live it and experience it. But you also have to realize that forgiveness is the only way forward. And by that I mean, it's one of the things I learned when I was dealing with the T-38 stuff is if you don't forgive and come to terms with it, it'll eat you alive. And I think that was one of the things I struggled with, losing my mom when I was a teenager or preteen, losing my dad when I was 30. You go through all the different phases of grief when something like that happens. But one of the things that kind of, I think it sticks around, it lingers, is there's a little bit of resentment because you feel like they left and they just left this big hole in your life and you don't know why and you don't know what you did to deserve it, but you also don't know how to cope with that. And when I was trying to figure out, being comfortable again with that jet, I discovered, I was reading books and listening to audiobooks and stuff, and one of them was talking about writing a forgiveness letter. And I did that. I did that for both my mom and my dad. And I think when I did that, you kind of realize that you're harboring a little bit of anger on top of the sadness, because it's not fair. When somebody dies, at 90 years old, it's a lot different than somebody that dies at 44 years old. And so the survivors sometimes feel cheated, and it is selfish. Obviously, we're not in control. We try to be, but we're never going to be. But having that ability to forgive, I think, is a good step. And then the second part is holding on to the memories and cherishing the memories. Like we talked about with Frenchie earlier in the segment or in the show, being able to go, hey, this is what I remember about that person, and holding on to it, talking about it next year, talking about it a year after that. The only thing that keeps somebody alive after they're gone is the memories. And I was talking to my stepmom when I was driving up here, and it's hard to believe it's been a year since I lost my dog, and 10 years since I lost my dad, and are going on 11 now. And, some things in your life are going to spark those memories. You'll have a song on the radio or a passing moment where you'll be like, yeah, I remember that. And I think that embracing those moments and trying to hold on to the good, because that's all you got left. And I think we are the sum of our experiences. You know, um, we become those things, and if you don't deal with it, it's going to come out one way or the other, and it'll manifest in the weirdest possible ways, because the human mind is more complicated than I understand. But talk to somebody, and you know get the help. It's always, there's always somebody you can reach out to, and if you feel like it's too much to bear, then there's 988 you can call. um, there's law enforcement, medical, counselors, just whatever. Just don't suffer in silence, and don't try to do it alone. Wombat.
Yeah, those are, I mean, kind of wish you guys had told me about this ahead of time, honestly, because there's a lot of emotions that flood with me just because it's something that I've dealt with, um and it's tough. And the I feel like I've reached a different phase of dealing with it because, and hopefully she doesn't get upset by me telling this, but the latest, the T6 that you guys talked about, where the guy uh, got killed on the ground with the whatever happened, and I'm sure we'll find out. But first officer that I fly with, I've flown with a handful of times, and I've told some of the stories. I told the story of Jeff Cuss, who was the Blue Angel that was one of my students, and that came back just a month ago or whenever I took my son to go watch the movie, and they do the tribute, and I mean, my 5.5-year-old holds my hand and is like, "Dad, are you okay?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You look upset." Like, so he could see it. Right. And I tell the story about when he was my student, and the effect it had when I found out it was him. And well, this particular guy, that the T6 guy, was this FO student at the or at the Air Force Academy, sorry. And it was the first time she was really dealing with this. And it's interesting how different people deal, but I told her, I go, "You're going to go through phases, like Mover said, you're going to go through different parts of this, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, you can't, I've lost enough friends now, both military, non-military. You can fight it. You could sit there and go, I'm not going to let this affect me. It's still going to affect you. It's still going to affect you the same way." And I agree with everything you guys have said. I agree with the faith side of it. In the moment, it's the hardest thing in the world. It truly is the hardest thing in the world. As you separate from the moment, I think it varies on the connection, right? Obviously, the closer the connection, the longer it takes to get through these phases. Where if it's somebody like, "Hey, I knew that guy or girl, like, or they were in my flight school class, or they were my wingman, or they were my best friend," like, it's different levels in our job. Um, but the process is still the same. And then, at least I have found in aviation, which makes it tougher, is, and I don't know how you guys are this way, but every time a mishap happens, every time somebody dies, my mind relives every one of those 11 friends I lost, every one of them. And I have to go through that again. Now, is it as in depth as it was the first time? No, but I relive that, and I do think that's important. You know, I have heard it said that, you know, they use the term warrior. It applies to anybody, frankly. Dies two deaths: the day they die and the day that people stop talking about them. And you know, so for me, that's why I try to bring that awareness. I try to remember it, even if it's just with my family. You know, my son and I have watched that Blue Angel special more times than I care to admit at this point, but we talk about it when it gets to that point, and he's learning lessons. And the last time we watched it, you know, he said to me, he goes, so Jeff was a real hero. And I was like, well, yeah. And he goes, and I go, but why do you think he was a hero? I'm just curious. He goes, well, look at all the good he did in the world while he was here. And I'm like, you want to talk about inspiring aviation and all the stuff we just talked about? I mean, and for a 5.5-year-old to process that and to realize it, I'm like, in a weird way, he's still doing it. I mean, how long's it been? 2016, right? He's still affecting people. So I do think that the faith side of it's important. I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody what they should or should believe, because that's not my business. I believe what I believe. And but I can tell you, looking back on the times in my life and where I'm at now, in the moment, I couldn't figure it out. It made no sense to me why so-and-so had to go. None. Fast forward 20 years and I can piece the line together of where I'm at based on decisions made after that happened. And it's like, well, wait a second. And I talked about this mover when I interviewed Nasty on your channel. Like, I'm not a fighter pilot. I'm not married. I don't have kids. If it wasn't for Gazer dying, that changed the whole course of everything in my life and where I was going to go in my career. And I mean, he made the ultimate sacrifice. And I think about him every day, because everything that's been built in my life was because of it. So I really don't think the connection ever ends, and it's never easy. But the other thing I want to bring up, and I think this is important, and you can see it and you can probably hear it in my voice, and I could see it in Mover's face, and I could see it in Gonky's face, is if you're ever in that situation where you think you've reached your limit to where you can't go on, obviously reach out, get the help and all that. But think about the words we're saying on how it affects the people left behind. Because that's truly, I mean, you're choosing to do that, right? None of my 11 friends chose to do that. There was unforeseen, unfortunate circumstances. But I mean, if you're literally to that point of suicide, it's like, think about how it's going to affect all those people around you. And, you know, your journey's done at that point here, and your decision's made and the pain stops. But how much did you just put on other people? And that's the part of it that I don't think people really take. And I mean, again, it's get the professional help. Don't take it from me. I'm not that. But it's I don't think, you know, to kind of answer what the woman asked, is like, I don't think you can truly get good at dealing with it. I do really enjoy the saying that somebody dies twice, and it's the day they die and the day people stop talking about them. And to me, I won't stop talking about them. And that's why I write. That's why they become characters in the books, to hopefully live on forever and give them a little something. Because I think that's so important. That, I mean, that's a small part I can do, which is significant, but it's something. So,
Yeah, Wombat. I mean, Mover and I thought about it too late, but we really wanted to get Frenchie on the show to, you know, to kind of immortalize some of his stories and stuff. But he was just fighting, you know, cancer too much. But Doug, clean it up, man.
This is going to be a really good one to have on the channel, because there's a lot of highlights there. I've been so fortunate in my life that this has happened to me very seldom in terms of immediate family or very close friends, but I've had a long career spending time with other people's children, which probably isn't the best way to say it. I'm an educator, and students die, and it's always young people. And that's happened twice when it was students that I knew really, really well and had become close to outside of the profession. And I've done it well and I've done it badly in terms of dealing with it. And my take on doing it well from experience is a lot of the things that you guys pointed to. Keep the memories alive. I absolutely hate funerals with a passion. I never go, but I went to those because I wanted to be around people who loved my lost friends as much as I did, and it helped. It helped focus on good memories. My voice was already shot. I'm not that emotional, honest. And one of those funerals was Mover's dad's funeral. It was important to be there. My own father committed suicide, and I haven't dealt with that yet. That's something that's still unresolved. And so, that's maybe a lesson for how not to do it. Professional help is definitely in play there if that's what works for you. And some people that I've been friends with who have gone through, Gonky mentioned the same kind of thing, right? Loss of a child. I've seen people deal with incredible adversity in those situations through faith. And, if that's something that helps you, take advantage of it. I think there's a tendency when people say professional help to not think of faith leaders, but in many cases they are professionals and they are qualified. And, reach out, get the help when you need it. And just like you said, Wombat, keep the memories alive.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Well, hopefully we did it some justice, but that's,
Yeah. It's never going to be easy.
no,
Never.
no.
No.
So it's, and as much as I've been through, I don't want that to be easy. If I really think about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
think
that's an
about that,
excellent
right?
point.
Like, I mean,
It's not something you want to get desensitized to.
No.
and I mean, feelings are feelings, and man, like those tough feelings are good feelings to have, and I've talked to people with parenting that, probably, oh, my kid's this way, so I have them on this medication or doing this. And I'm like, sometimes those feelings are good. Like they need to learn how to harness those feelings. And, on this, I've seen people handle it really well and I've seen people handle it really poorly, but people have handled it well they never shy away from the feeling. Right. I mean, I'm not the times I've cried and the tears I've shed over my friends, like they're not over. I promise you, there'll be more. There's very close to some right now. And I'm okay with that because that just means it's still there and the memory's still there. The people have not left. They're not gone. And they're still making a difference. And sometimes I think people make more of a difference when they're gone than they do here in a weird way. So it's tough. I don't think there's an easy answer for it, unfortunately, but maybe that's a good thing too.